Afternoon, everybody. It's Mike Piazza, Sunday, April 30th. As promised, I was going to put together a video to give you guys a little presentation on some of the things that we do at the 2-year-old sale. So, just in case some of you aren't aware how a 2-year-old sale works, um, usually about a week to 10 days before the April sale starts, there are 6 days of breezing. Breezing is where the horse is basically going to go all out for a furlong, sometimes two, and occasionally 3 furlongs. That's a decision that the consigner and the owner make. Some just want to breeze 1 furlong real fast. Some will often try to do 2 and 3 furlongs. At the April sale, there was 6 days of breezing, 200 horses a day. And then after the 6 days of breezing, there are a couple days which are just completely dedicated to going to look at the horses from barn to barn. And you look at these horses in person, you evaluate them on walk, conformation, just the overall presence of the horse. Then, after doing that for a couple days, the auction starts. Now, even though there are 3 separate sections to the sale, they kind of intertwine in a way too, because after maybe the first 2 days of breezing, consigners will have a couple hours during the breeze and also later in the afternoon to show some horses that already breezed. And then during the auction part of the whole process, you're also spending mornings and sometimes afternoons looking at horses, sometimes 3 and 4 times. So that's the process. So the first thing we want to talk about is the actual breeze. So you can watch the breeze, obviously on video that is provided to you live on the OBS website, or you can get a DVD from OBS and you can take that DVD and go back and watch. Often many people watch those in their own hotel rooms, on their laptops and computers and things like that. Now, when you do attend the breeze live, there are 2 areas of the racetrack where people tend to watch the breezes. That is usually done right in the grandstand, right by the finish line. You can see the horse go by you, and you can also clock the horse galloping out. A furlong out is the typical clock out, and then we also have another furlong for a gallop out. I mean, technically they're both galloping out, but I do think that you have to be really careful not to knock a horse too much on that last eighth of a mile gallop out, because often that is a sign of, it could be the horse is not quite fit enough to really finish the 3 furlongs out completely. Also, it can just be the consigner. You have to know what the mentality of the consigner is. Some consigners will, push those horses around for the whole gallop out, and some don't. So it's important that you don't knock them too much on that. But at the same time, it is an important part of the process. So many people will watch it from the front, and what I actually do and what a few others do is we actually watch it from the backside. I think I sent a video out to you guys a couple days ago to show you where actually I stand. And the reason why I do it from back there is I can always go back and watch video of the actual breeze itself. But you cannot go back and watch video of what you can see from the backside. And all those horses go by you real fast on the front side. But to be honest with you, when they're galloping out, you really start to see a lot more information. You can really, especially coming around the turn, you can see how the horses are, coming at you. You can see their action. You can see if they're getting out, lugging in. When they go by you, you can see what type of equipment they might have on. And also you can hear for any type of breathing issue that a horse might have. And that is one area we do not want to touch. We want nothing to do with horses who have breathing issues. Often these horses will scope fine, but it's not until they're under a tremendous amount of stress or hitting a tremendous amount of fatigue where they might have a little bit of struggle to get full air capacity, and often you can hear that when they gallop out. So that's why we like to be on the backside. Now, when the horse is breezing, obviously you're clocking the horse, and what most people do is they just write these times in a catalog, and if a horse breezes in 10 and 2 and gallops out 11 and 3, out 12 and 4, you write those times down. But these horses don't breeze in the same order. You could have hip number 50 go first and hip number 3 can go second. So when you're writing all these times in your book, I've always wondered how are people really making sense of these numbers? Because first off, you have to know at what time of the day that horse breezed. The track tends to slow down. It's a synthetic track down there, but the track does seem to get hotter and slows down later in the afternoon. So just to look at a time when you go back to reflect, I just don't understand how most people can really say they make full use of those times, because let's say, for example, you open up your catalog and you look down and you wrote that a horse went a certain time. I mean, how do you really know, like, comparatively, was that a great time? Was it a so-so time? Was it an average time? Was it below average? Was it bad? And it's also important that you're going to compare those times against horses that kind of breezed around that same time. So since they don't breeze in order, if you're just writing the time in your catalog, what are you comparing it to? So this wasn't good enough for me, even though this is what everybody else was doing. So I had to become better and more efficient at doing it. And I developed a program that I'm going to share with you guys that allows me to, I feel anyway, I developed this program a year ago. It played a big role in what kind of sort of got me towards identifying Adonis Creed. But the program I developed was for me to become much, much more efficient at analyzing the information that was presented to me, so I could spend less time analyzing, looking at horses that don't even meet the criteria, and put more attention into horses that do. So I'm going to give you guys an example. If you look up here at the top where it says hip, that's the hip number. Split 1, split 2, split 3. So this will be the furlong, the breeze, the first gallop out, second gallop out. Any notes, as I said, from the backside, you really can see a lot. So any notes that I observe. Then I have a special formula in what's called my Zilla column. That is putting a special amount of weight towards certain parts of this breeze. I did a over 3,000 horse sampling, and I have a formula that I built in that I've really, really happy to, say this thing works out really well. And then I actually ranked them. We also want to know what a horse goes for by purchase price when it was a yearling, what sale it came out of, the sex of the horse's sire, the dam, blah, blah, blah. Now, to put all this information in takes a lot of time. If you guys look, I have well, you won't be able to see that unless I move this up because the screen does not cover. But anyway, so here's what I developed. Right now, let's pretend the consignor says, coming to the track to breeze in 8th is hip number 250. So I put in 250. And just like that, it tells me that this was a $200,000 yearling who was bought in the Keelan October, or Fassick Tipton October sale. He's a colt. He's by Uncle Mo. The dam is Charlie My Girl, Pennsylvania bred. Top line sales consigns a horse, and that horse is located in barn 14. So as soon as this horse is about to start its breeze, this automatically gets populated for me. So I built this up. It's tremendous. So if I change this hip number from 250 and go to 350, it changes it to a two-step salsa, and all that information comes in. So it does not matter what hip number we want to talk about. It's all going to be here. So now the horse breezes, and it says the horse went 10 and 2. Well, 10 and 2 is 10.40. So I put 10.40 in. I clock the first part of the gallop out. Let's say that's 11 seconds flat. And let's say it finishes the last part of the gallop out in 12. Now, if you look, we have a 23 flat gallop out. This occurred in day 1, set 1. The total time cumulatively was 33 and 2. 33.40 in 5th seconds is 33 and 2. Now the Zilla score, which is, like I said, a special formula that I have built in based on the times, which is also adjusted for what day, what set, and it's using a sort of like a track variant I have built in here. Because as I said, the track changes. So we want to make sure that we're comparing horses, on equal ground. So, and I have it highlighted to highlight green because this is a good score. So we want to make sure that we don't miss these things. There's a lot of data, and I'm going to show you guys how much data do I compile. And can you imagine if I was, putting all this in by hand? I actually did this 2 years ago by hand, and it was unbelievable how long it took me. So I developed this program. So now if I type in the next horse, let's say it's 351, and this horse goes 10 and 4 or 10 and 2 also. Let's say this horse gallops out 11.39 and goes out 12.45. You can see he went 34.24 cumulatively. His Zilla score was 66.43. It's white. Let's say the next horse comes up and he goes 10 and 3. Let's say he actually does even a better, or let's say he does 10 and 3, 10.60. And let's say he goes out 11.54, out in 12.89. You can see his is orange. Let's do one more. We'll go hit 407. Let's say he goes 10 flat, out 10.98, out 11.47. He's got a lower score. The lower the better. He is now in dark green. And then we'll just do one more. Let's say hit 409, goes 11, 12, 13. This is a bad score. It's red. Now, after I do all these breezes, now I have to keep this information confidential. So just so you guys, I don't want to, someone else sees this video and they bought some of these horses. This is information that I did all the work for, and I don't want people seeing my opinion on any horses. So just so I can show you how much work was done at this sale, I'm just going to hide some of these columns. I'm going to hide the hip number. I'm going to hide the purchase and the sale. And I'm also going to hide the sire, dam, what state they were foaled, what consignor. So I just want to show you guys what horses we actually did clock. Okay, so here we go. Here's the actual real horses. Here we go. And you see all these notes. Shut it down late. Can't breathe. Wingy. Gulp noise late. This horse got loose running in the chute. Maybe heard a noise here. Another can't breathe. This horse took 3 bad steps on a gallop out. These horses were kind of acting up badly in the chute. And if you look, there's a lot of red here. This horse bolted. This horse bolted and can't breathe. This horse dumped his rider and actually got loose running around the track. This horse, look at can't breathe. These were 2 horses that, Chad, who was next to me, said he thought he had liked when they galloped out. Let's see. Just some equipment, full cheek snaffle. This horse was a jerk trying to toss the rider. Lugging out, bad action. This horse was wearing a figure 8. So you can see if you just look at the volume, I mean, there's a ton of breezes here. So I sat out there for 6 days, and we take all this information, we put it in. Then when this is all done, we transport it over to day 1, day 2. I break it apart. Now, if you look here, So I start to evaluate what horses I want to watch the video. I don't have time to watch every video. So what I'll do is I'll go through all the horses based on their Zilla scores and any notes that I make. Also look at the sire, the dam, the previous purchase price. And if I think I like what I see on paper here and what I observed in the breeze, then I make a note to go back and watch the video. If you see some videos say no, same yes, this means I watched the video and it did not pass my evaluation. If I say yes, it passed. If I say maybe, it means I have to probably go back and look at it again. Maybe go look at the horse, and if I really like the horse, then we'll put it on a list. After I do all this evaluations, I put them in a ranking system. Now, I tested this out off of last year's sale, and I can promise you guys, I rarely, if ever, see any horses that have done anything to date who were in the red zone last year. And most of the horses who did well came out of the green zone. Now, let's be clear. Just because you buy a horse in the green zone doesn't guarantee you're going to have success. But I'll tell you what, I can promise you, horses that generally are going to score in this red area are very unlikely to be good horses. You don't score in the red by accident in most cases. So after I'm at the breeze show to about 2 in the afternoon, I then go back, we might go look at horses for a couple hours. Then I go back to the hotel room. I try to get a quick bite to eat. Often I just grab something and eat right at my desk while I got my laptop on. It's time to watch slow motion video. It was my birthday on April 20th, and I was sitting at my desk eating a tuna fish sandwich, working all night. I then go back and I watch all the slow motion videos on all the horses that made my initial cut. So then I'm going to show you guys how I watch the slow motion videos. So if I bring over a slow motion video, you can see that this allows me to see the action of the horse. There's lots of things I'm evaluating. I just picked a random horse here, and the first thing I notice why this horse is breezing is, why it might appear that the horse actually has a decent stretch and looks like he's moving okay. He's actually not. This horse is doing what's called cross-firing. So if we look, this horse is correctly running on his front right lead. But if you look in his rear, he's actually on the left lead. So this horse is what's called cross-firing, and that's generally not something we want to be a part of. Sometimes it could be because the horse is a little bit green. He just got put under a lot of stress to run as hard and fast as he ever has did in his life. But usually there's something pinching, something bothering the horse when they are cross-firing. So I'll stay away from that. We have 1,200 horses. We have to cut it down to a shorter list. So if they don't look good on video, and there's other things that we look at and try to evaluate in slow motion. So if I like what I see on video, I then come over here and put a yes next to it, and then I put that horse on my list. I then enter all the horses who make a yes into my book, and then I meet up with the bloodstock team and the trainer. And in this case, it was Chad Summers this year. I then go meet with them, and we kind of talk about what horses that I liked. They talk about what horses that they liked, and anywhere where there's a commonality that we like the horse, then we know that's potentially a horse for Zilla Racing. And then we go look at those horses in person. When we go look at these horses in person, I'm doing my own separate analysis. I don't try to listen to what the others are saying because I want to formulate my own opinion. And we kind of just do our own thing. And we all form our own opinions. And then what we do at the end of the day, after we spent the whole day going around looking at horses, I'm talking, you're walking 3 to 4 miles a day. You're standing half that time. You're in the hot 80, 90 degree heat in Ocala. It's a long process. You're walking from barn to barn. And if anyone has ever been in Ocala at the sale, you'll know how massive and how spread out these barns are. And it's a long, long day. And then when you come back, you're going to look at the horses in person. We meet up at the end of each day and we discuss what our opinions were. And this is where we kind of really, bang our heads and we look for horses that we kind of all agreed on. Now, there might be horses that I don't like and the bloodstock agent does, or the bloodstock agent doesn't like, and Chad likes or I like. And the ones where we differ, sometimes we might go back together, take a look at that horse together, and kind of talk it over. But generally, we're kind of working together, but we're kind of working independently. Meet up end of the day, we discuss our findings, and then if we all have horses that are kind of on all of our list, we make that a note, and we'll come back and see that horse another day. Now the next day, the whole process starts all over again. We have to evaluate all the horses, watch all the breezes, watch them in slow motion, go back and look at all the horses in person, make that list, bang it up again to each other's book, and it's just keep doing it over and over and over. And I said, when you're doing all the stuff that I'm doing, watch, because I can promise you guys, not everybody's doing this kind of this volume of work that I'm doing, especially with the slow motion video. Like I said, it takes me to midnight every night. If I go out to dinner with the group, 1 or 2 nights, like it puts me behind the 8 ball, and I have to play catch up. So it's all work. It's no fun and games down there for me anyway. So the next part of the thing I wanted to discuss is, what do we look at? I have one of the questions here. I asked a few people would like to submit a question, and one of the people said, I have 2 questions. Value/price. If you put the average person in front of a $10,000 mobile home and a $1 million mansion, they can easily tell the difference. But those same people in front of 2 horses in those price ranges, and you get differing options. Different options, maybe he meant opinions, but I know a lot has to do with conformation, breeding, workout times, etc. So you could have 2 Uncle Mo colts with conformation so similar that the average person can't see the difference. One might have worked in 9 and 3, and the other was 10 and 2. Does less than 1 second difference justify $1 million difference? So that's a good question. And this is very true. The average person can't tell the difference. But I'll also say, the experts themselves sometimes can't tell the difference, because in hindsight, because when you think about it, if you were to go back and pull up last year's sale results, the year before that, and you go track all the horses that were, had big money spent on them, you'd be amazed how many of the sharpest people get it wrong. And that's where we first have to start this whole conversation with, is to understand the difficulty in what we're doing. For example, if you look at the Gulfstream Park Fassick-Tipton sale from 2016 in March, I think about a month ago, I went through the top 10 horses. They might have totaled $8 million. They were bought by the sharpest people in the game, and obviously they were very expensive horses. And for the most part, not many of those horses have done much. So you have to understand just how difficult this game is, to actually be successful. In fact, one of the areas where most of the people that I've worked with, as far as bloodstock agents, really, I think, kind of appreciate what I'm going to tell you guys, is I actually think the bloodstock agent's job, it's kind of refreshing they tell me to hear this, because it's true. The bloodstock agent job, and even my job, isn't so much guaranteeing you we can find the best racehorse. It's actually the opposite. What we're trying to do is eliminate as many bad horses from the population, because it's a very difficult game. It's very difficult. These are horses. They're not, machines. So if you think of it from this point of view, I think you guys are going to get a greater understanding of this. What we're trying to do is eliminate the bad ones. If you can eliminate the bad apples, you basically are giving yourself the highest chance of having success. Because I'm telling you guys, you can't just go there and say, hey, I'm going to go down there and, I'm going to buy the best horse, buy the best horse, buy the best horse. There is a lot of luck involved, and the way you give yourself the best chance to be lucky is to eliminate the obvious bad ones. Now, when this guy in this question from Jim says, can the difference in value be that significant? It actually is, because there are very few horses, for example, who will go 9-3, as Jim mentioned. Maybe one horse went 9-3 at the last sale. There was a bunch who went 9-4. But this is what the objective of the Bree Show is. It's for the consigners to show how fast their horse is. And there's a lot of money out there. You see all the money that was spent in this sale, and people are willing to pay for the speed. Now, I do feel that speed is somewhat overvalued, because there is no race that will ever run there's no race in America that any of these thoroughbreds will run where they have to run a 9-4 furlong, not even 10-4. Horses, for the most part, they're never going to go this fast in any race of their life. So we kind of overpay for speed. What's important is how the horse moves. How efficient is the horse's stride? Because a lot of these horses do go fast, but they have so many inefficiencies in their stride that when you stretch that out over a longer distance, the inefficiency will catch up to them, and they will slow down and get tired, and they won't be able to sustain that speed. So what we're really looking for are horses who show enough speed, but also have a very efficient way they move, that they can carry that over a longer distance. Now, there are 3 criteria that will basically determine what a horse will sell for. You have the conformation. Conformation is basically how that horse is put together. You have the breeding, and you have the breeze, the workout. So if you have a limited budget, I can promise you, you will not be able to afford horses who have breezed great, who have great pedigree behind them in the breeding, and who are conformationally correct. Horses who hit all 3 of those criteria go for the big money. So what we have to do, because see, my job is not to go down here to find the best horse. Trust me, guys, there were a lot of horses I wish I could afford, that I know, I'd have strong confidence in, that a lot of these horses would become very successful, great at stake horses. But I don't have that money behind me right now that I could go out and buy the best horse in a sale. So my job is to try to get us the best horse that we can afford on a limited budget. And I can promise you guys, it is not easy. Often we will hear stories of, this, you look in a stake race and you'll see a lot of cheap horses sometimes become stake horses, and you hear about California Chrome and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is, the reason why you see so many cheap horses making it to the stake races sometimes is because there are so many cheap horses. You go back to like when Jim asked the question about 9-3 and breezing in 9-3, 9-4, there are very, very, very few horses that go that fast in a breeze show. There are a lot of horses who go 10-3, 10-4, blah, blah, blah. There are lots of horses who sell for less than $50,000, but there are very few horses who sell for $1 million. So the reason why you see, it gives the illusion that it's very easy to find horses for $20,000 and $40,000 that become stake races, because you see it, but the volume is so many. It's like a bad baseball player. A baseball player who doesn't really hit the ball very good, but because if he gets a lot of chances up at the plate, if he gets a lot of at bats, he'll get a few hits because he's got so many at bats. So that's kind of like an illusion, that I feel that people haven't, they don't understand. So the reason why budget is so important, I get a lot of emails from partners that say, hey, you know what? Don't spend too much down here. We can find good horses for $40,000 and this and that. And it's not that easy. The budget is what matters. it doesn't matter what you spend on a horse, whether you spend $1 million or 50,000, but your budget means everything. And I'll show you what I mean by that. If I go to the OBS website now, and I'll show you guys what I mean. So if we go to the sale and we pull up the results, I'll sort them by the price. So the reason why budget is important is, let's just say, for example, you had a budget of $10,000. You tell your bloodstock team, or you tell me, hey, go find me a good horse. All I can spend is $10,000. Well, let's see. There are over 1,200 horses in a sale, and let's see how many you could have afforded for $10,000. Right there. So if your budget was $10,000, this would mean these are the only players that you had access to. Now, could there be a star in there? Absolutely. But the odds are these horses, for the most part, probably aren't going to do much. So having a small budget, these are the only horses that you have access to. And because they were so cheap, they probably don't have the pedigree behind them, or they didn't breeze well, or they have terrible conformation. So you're already in a high-risk pool. Now, if your budget is $100,000, all of a sudden you have access to all these horses that the other situation you didn't have access to. Now look at how many doors this opens up. Now it becomes a little bit easier to find maybe a little bit of a diamond in the rough, like an Adonis Creed from last year. But then that stops here. If your budget was $40,000, it stops here. And maybe the people that you're trying to beat in your competition, they might have budgets much higher than yours, and they have access to all these horses up here. So it just keeps going and going and going. So the higher your budget doesn't necessarily mean that you have to spend it, but it gives you greater access. It's kind of like you being an NBA scout. If your budget's small, it's basically you're an NBA scout, and you can only select college players from like small schools, Division III, and you're trying to compete and beat your opponents who might have access to the players up here, which are the elite schools in Division I. Now think about that. Do you think you could go out there and assemble one of the best basketball teams to win on a regular basis if you could only select players from Division III colleges in small schools? Now, sure, there's some good players in those schools. And sure, there's probably some Hall of Fame player who was a late draft pick or came out of a Division III school. But let's think about it in the real term. In the big picture, most of your best players are going to come from the Division I schools and the top colleges out there. So budget is important. So I hope you guys understand just how hard we have to work to try to find good athletes who are down here in this bracket. It's so difficult, and that's why I developed my program for me to really zone in and to see what these horses are doing. When I go back and everything is color coded, you see this. I get a good visual. There's so many horses to evaluate that I look. I say, oh, there's a green one right here. Here's a green one. I got to make sure I give those guys an extra look. Ones that are red. I don't need to spend that much time in there because I did all the homework. I did all the research. I did all the analytics. Very, very difficult to get a horse that's going to be good, that's going to be in this red. So by me developing this program, I'm already, miles ahead of others, and I can go right into watching a slow motion video. And then after we start looking at the horses in person, I then have to go do a lot of homework, look up, dams, pedigrees, other siblings, and kind of try to put a market value on a horse. And that's what I felt. This past sale was so overpriced. I really think it's going to open up a lot of things in the Maryland sale in May. I wasn't willing to overpay for our horses. It's one of my strengths is risk to reward, and I think a lot of people overpaid for their horses. There were some nice horses, and there was a lot of horses that I wanted, and I wish I could have afforded, but I'm not gonna significantly overpay. Sometimes you have to overpay, but we got the Maryland sale sitting behind us. I think we're going to be in a good position to kind of pick up the pieces. So that's kind of, just so you guys think, when you see all these cheap horses running in a stake race, don't think it's that easy. There's a very small population of expensive horses. There's a very big population of cheap horses. So you're going to get that false illusion that, it's very simple to go buy horses for 40,000 and end up in stake races. So that's that. Let's see if I have any other questions. Let's see. Here's a good question, also submitted by Jim. Sale versus private purchase. Having attended an OBS sale with you in January and seeing what these horses are going through, being all jacked up, pulled in and out of stalls all day, plus the supply demand factor, wouldn't it be a good idea to find a quality breeder / farm and buy a horse privately? That's another good question, but you have to think about it from the seller's point of view as well. If you like your horse and you think you have a good horse, why would you want to sell it privately unless someone's really giving you a price that you can't refuse? You'd be almost better off putting that horse in the auction and let the market, go bidding on your horse, especially when you see these prices year after year after year going up. Also, for me, it's very difficult for me to do a private purchase and syndicate the horse out. In fact, I've warned some of our newer clients and potential new clients to be careful when you buy a horse with a syndicate that the horse is bought privately, because you don't really know the market value of that horse. One thing that the auction does is it at least gives you a market value. The market bids. So if I buy a horse in the ring for 80,000, you at least know that horse is at least the market determined that horse to be around $75,000-$80,000 horse. Whereas if I buy a horse privately, how do you really know what that horse is worth? So I think it gives clients in a syndicate greater confidence when they see the horse go through the ring and is bought, or even if it's bought as an RNA. We know the market rejected the reserve price, but at least it's a ballpark, something to work with. So that's why particularly I think we will try to avoid private sales on unraced horses. Now, I have no problem buying a horse privately that does have a racing record. That's much, much easier to put an evaluation on. One other question I had was maybe something along the lines of, does price / purchase price directly relate to stakes, graded stakes, Derby, Breeders' Cup level horses? It's kind of similar to what I just showed. What it does correlate in a way, because I'm saying you're going to see a lot of expensive horses that don't do a thing. But for the most part, like I said earlier, there's 3 components of what makes you pay a lot of money for a horse: the breeze, the conformation, and the pedigree. So generally, the more expensive horses are going to have the best chance of having success because they do have all 3 of those criteria often covered. Whereas the cheaper horses, you might have to take a lot of risk with conformational flaws. You might have to take risk with first-year sires or dams who have produced 6 horses that never won a race. Or maybe you have to take a horse who, wasn't quite one of the fastest at the breeze. So when you're buying cheaper horses, you just have to give on something. And generally, like we buy our cheaper horses, I never was a believer in giving up on the athlete. Like I showed you in my Zilla system I created, we got red, we got green, white is neutral, orange is kind of bad, light green is good, dark green is great. So to me, this is the athlete. And I'm not willing to give up on the athlete because technically I don't even care who the parents are. If you ran a baseball team and, Mike Trout or Derek Jeter shows up to play on your team, once they show you how good they are in front of you, does it really matter who their parents are? So to me, the number one thing for me is the athlete. And at a 2-year-old sale, we get to see that athlete in motion. I can do the analytics. I can watch that horse in slow motion. So I can see the athlete. For me, that's number one. So the number two thing for me is confirmation. If horses have bad confirmation, they're the least likely to stay sound. They're the least likely to get to the races. So that's an area I really don't want to give up on. So if I'm looking for good athletes who have good confirmation, we have to give something. We can't buy horses in our price range, 150,000-ish and lower. We're not going to be able to get all three of these things. I have to give on something. So I like to try to give on breeding. That's where I want to take the same risk because there are a lot of, stake horses who have siblings who don't do a lick. Like the old saying is, Ray Charles had a brother who could see. Pull up the sibling to American Pharoah. It's a claiming horse. You pull up siblings to a lot of these stake horses. They've done a lick. Now, I still would prefer a pedigree. I'd love to have something proven on page behind our purchases, but you can't get all three of these things at our price point. There were some awesome horses that scored super high on my Zilla score. Horses that I loved the way they looked in person. Horses that the team loved in person, and they might have liked the way the horse breathes, but we just couldn't afford those horses. And it's a shame because it doesn't allow me to really show you guys how good at this we are. Because we don't have the budget to pick the best athletes. Like I said, we're picking a Division III guys. And I really do think so far we've done well, but that's not good enough. I want to get better and better and better, and we will continue to do so. And that's why we continue to work hard. So that was that. And let's see, I might have another question. Nope, that's pretty much it. That's the questions that I had sent to me. So what you can expect, we got the sale coming up in May. We're going to probably strike early at the sale. I don't want to put myself in a position where, we're never going to buy a horse to buy a horse, but end of the day, we got to buy a horse. So we're going to strike early. I might have to open up the budget. Listen, end of the day, guys, it's going to cost the same amount of money to take care of a claiming horse or take care of a graded stakes horse. So if we really want to take this to the next level, we're going to have to, kind of open things up so I have greater access to obtain some of these better quality athletes. But we're going to strike early. We're going to get one early so we can make sure that we're good to go. And another thing for you guys to know that I think is pretty exciting, we're going to only select horses for the most part that we can just ship right to the racetrack. When you do buy horses that do need time, or you buy a horse who bucked its shins and might need 60 to 90 days on a farm before it can start training, you do get discounts on those horses. But I think that we're probably better off at this stage. If we're going to buy 2-year-olds, let's buy some 2-year-olds that we can just go right to the racetrack with. It kind of, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to obtain that horse because a lot of these horses do come out of their breezes with issues and they need some time. But we're going to try to just pick horses where we can get them right into the racetrack, get them right into training. And that should help line things up for Saratoga much better. So we're going to be much, much more fit going into Saratoga had we given a horse a vacation. Now, we are going to start to really expand in the yearling market. I think the yearling market is where we're going to find our best values. We have a tremendous team. We just brought on Liz Crow from BSW Bloodstock. If you don't know who BSW Bloodstock is, and Bradley Weisbord, Liz Crow, Google them, look them up. Liz Crow just bought a $60,000 yearling that she sold for $1 million at this past sale. She bought Lady Eli, Master Plan. She's got a bunch of stake horses under her resume. I was so impressed with working with Liz at this sale. She's a lot like myself, where she's just all work, no play. Um, she was one of the few people besides myself who sat there for the whole 6 days in a breeze, out and watching these horses breeze, and never spent time having conversations, paid attention. Never, for the most part, their eye was on every horse that went by. She's a hard worker. Um, and working with Chad Summers, I mean, I never been to any. I've been going to horse sales now for almost 6 years, and I never met somebody so connected. Someone who just knew everybody and had a relationship with everybody. He's personable. He's knowledgeable. He's likable. I think it's just good to have those kind of people on our team. The vision that we have, we want to surround ourselves with more people like that. Um, you know, so just have some patience, guys. But I just want you guys to understand, how much work is being done behind the scenes. I think sometimes people think, we just go down there, have a little fun out in Florida, and look at a catalog and go look at horses and go in a ring and bid. There are so many analytics being done behind the scenes, and um, I think hopefully that will give you guys even more confidence. I mean, I know we have good results over the 4.5 years we've been doing this, but that's our bottom. I can promise you guys that's our bottom. I mean, the sky is the limit for us. I'm always going to keep working to get us in a better spot. And eventually, we just got our first stake winner with Celtic Chaos, 2-year-old we bought for $55,000 2 years ago. We have Adonis Creed, who we bought for $40,000 last year. He's going to be running in the Grade 2 Penn Mile. That race is $500,000. He's a talented horse, and he could very well win that race, and that would really, really steer things in a big direction for us. But we'll continue to plug away. We'll continue to work hard. And I said we'll get some horses in the Maryland sale. I know you guys have other syndicates you can go to, but I really, really appreciate for you guys who are just sticking with us and staying patient. I know a couple of you guys were kind of disappointed we didn't get a 2-year-old at this past sale, but I value every dollar you guys give me, and I will not spend just to spend. So we'll pick up the pieces in the May sale, and look forward to that, and talk to you guys soon. Shoot me an email if you guys have any questions. Hopefully I covered everything that I wanted to in this video. But if not, I'll answer questions through the email. All right, you guys have a good night, and I hope you enjoyed the video.